Look at that screen. Look at it carefully. Because in less than 40 minutes, that screen is going to change everything in this room. The funding, the valuation, the future of an entire company, and the person who changes it. She's 17 years old, the youngest engineer in the building. 5 minutes ago, they tried to throw her out. Before we go back, you need context. This wasn't just a product demo. This was $200 million in Series C funding, 300 investors, founders, analysts, venture capital partners from firms whose signatures move markets before lunch. At the center of it all, an AI model that promised something dangerous: neutral decision-making, bias-resistant architecture, a system designed not just to predict behavior, but to identify and correct flawed data patterns before they caused harm. It was supposed to be the cleanest demonstration of machine fairness anyone in that room had ever seen. It didn't survive the first 10 minutes, and Gary Richard, head of engineering, 15-year company veteran, the man whose name appeared on nearly every major architecture decision in the company's history, thought he was in control. He wasn't. Picture the room. Glass walls stretching to the ceiling, Silicon Valley sunlight cutting hard across rows of tailored suits and glowing laptop screens, 500 chairs filled with people who could make or break a company with a single nod across a dinner table. At the podium stood Calvin Johnson, CEO, founder, the man who built this company from a Palo Alto garage, a second mortgage, and 18 years of polite rejection emails from the same firms now sitting in his audience. Today was supposed to be redemption. Row 12. That's where Brenda sat. 17, laptop open, not watching the presentation, watching the live back-end metrics streaming quietly on her secondary window. Latency spikes at minute 4, decision tree instability at minute 6, an anomaly inside the secondary training loop that had no business being there. She had flagged it 14 days ago, documented it carefully, filed 3 separate memos with timestamps, reproduction steps, and suggested remediation paths that required no senior sign-off to begin. No response. Not a reply, not a rejection, not even a read receipt from Gary's office. So she kept watching, quietly, the way people watch when they already know what's coming and understand that knowing is the only leverage they have. Waiting to see if she was wrong. She wasn't. Gary Richard moved through the investor section like he owned the oxygen in the room. He stopped at row 12, looked at Brenda, didn't ask her name, he'd seen her badge, knew who her father was, and decided that was all he needed to know. His hand landed on her shoulder, firm, controlled, the kind of touch that doesn't ask permission. Out, now. 300 people present, not one looked up, not one intervened. That silence wasn't accidental, it was agreement. Gary leaned in, voice low enough that only she could hear. If you access production without authorization, your father loses the funding, not you, him. That was the calculus, a clean threat with real consequences attached. He wasn't wrong, and Brenda knew it, which made what happened next even more dangerous. The screen froze, mid-sentence. The AI paused, then generated a racial slur. White letters, black background, projected behind Calvin, mirrored on every investor tablet in the room simultaneously. No gasp, no shouting, just stillness. The kind of stillness that smells like lawsuits, canceled wires, and emergency board calls scheduled for the following morning. Front row, Rhoda Garvin stood, partner at one of the most powerful venture firms in the world, someone who had walked out of rooms like this before and taken her checkbook with her. "Can we address what just happened?" Calvin didn't turn around. His voice was steady, a skill refined over 18 years of not letting a room see you flinch. Minor technical delay, our team is resolving it. The word remained on screen, ugly, unavoidable, burning into every retina in the room. Radha sat, slowly, unconvinced. The room wasn't evaluating the technology anymore. They were evaluating leadership, whether the man at the podium understood what had just happened and whether the organization behind him could be trusted to fix it. Gary moved toward the main control terminal. His plan was simple: reboot, buy time, reset the optics, let the PR team handle the narrative. What he didn't understand was that rebooting wouldn't solve anything. This wasn't a system failure. This was dataset poisoning. Corrupted entries with targeted weights embedded deep enough in a high-impact branch that a standard restart would simply loop the model back to the same poisoned subset. It would happen again. Same room, same investors, same screen. Brenda saw the pattern in under 30 seconds. She stood. "Tell him not to reboot." The security guard hesitated, caught between a direct order from the head of engineering and a 17-year-old who sounded like she knew something he didn't. "It's not hardware," Brenda said, calm as a closed door. "It's weighted corruption in the training subset. If he restarts, it repeats in 4 minutes. No panic, just certainty." She accessed the remote portal on view-only credentials. Officially, that was all she had. Unofficially, she'd spent months running architecture reviews that nobody senior had bothered to assign. She'd just done them, documented them, filed them. She knew the system's skeleton better than anyone except Gary. She found the corrupted subset immediately. 200 weighted entries inserted 3 days ago after the last external audit, when nobody would think to look again. Deliberate placement in a decision branch the demo was guaranteed to trigger. She checked the injection signature against patterns in her own research logs. She'd seen this exact signature before, 6 weeks earlier in a sandbox test environment, a smaller model, a flag she'd raised and been ignored on. Someone inside had done this, and they'd done it twice. 40 seconds. Her hand hovered over the keyboard. $200 million. Her father's name. 300 investors watching a stage she had the power to fix from a folding chair in row 12. She thought of a scanned page she kept pinned inside her code repository, her mother's handwriting on a yellow notepad from a lecture given years before Brenda was old enough to understand it. The data doesn't lie. Trust the data. She executed the patch. Gary's hand touched the terminal. The screen flickered. The slur disappeared. Clean output resumed. Structured response, precise language, bias filters fully engaged. Exactly as designed. The room exhaled in a single collective breath. Not applause. Relief. Calvin continued the presentation without breaking his sentence. Gary froze at the terminal. He scanned the room slowly. The engineering team on the left wall, the AV booth, the senior staff near the front. He never looked at row 12. That was his second mistake.
The rest of the run ran flawlessly. Real-time translation across 11 languages, predictive risk modeling, bias correction operating exactly as the architecture had promised. Investors leaned forward, not away. Final slide. Measured applause. The kind that means people are thinking, not just clapping. Lights up. Gary walked directly to Brenda. "You accessed production. I fixed production. You don't have clearance." The commit log shows temporary override permissions assigned during the active incident window. Verify it. His jaw tightened. "You're 17. And you were about to crash the same system twice in front of the same room." Her tone never shifted. No triumph, no anger. Just the flat delivery of someone reading back a fact. "You're welcome." He had nothing, because the room wasn't reading the situation the way it would have an hour ago. The ground had moved, and everyone who mattered had felt it. Calvin appeared at the end of the aisle. The corrupted dataset. Source. Gary hesitated, a half-second too long. "I'll need to review the logs." "Do it now." Not loud, but final. The voice of a man who had stopped performing patience. 20 minutes later, Gary returned. Slower, shoulders too deliberately straight, the color in his face not quite right. He didn't look at Brenda. He couldn't. Internal account, lead data scientist, entries inserted 3 days ago. He resigned this morning. The investors didn't react audibly. They didn't need to. They were watching Gary, not the screen, not the slide deck, not Calvin. The man who had been in charge of the system that failed and who was about to make it fail again. For the first time in 15 years, Gary Richard was not the most competent person in the room, and there was no version of the afternoon where that wasn't visible to everyone who mattered. Radha found Brenda in the corridor outside the investor hall. "How do I know you didn't create the issue to fix it?" Brenda didn't flinch. "Pull the original commit log, compare digital signatures. The corrupted entries were inserted 72 hours ago. My override is timestamped to the live demo window. 2 different authors, 2 different days." Radha looked at her steadily. "How old are you?" 17. "College?" Deferred. A pause that lasted exactly long enough to mean something. Then Radha extended her hand. "Radha Garvin. I know. I've read every portfolio memo your firm has published since 1917. Something shifted in Radha's expression, not softened, recalibrated. "She's not an intern," Radha said to Calvin, who had appeared behind Brenda. "Senior AI engineer," Calvin replied, "effective today." "About time," Radha said. Then to Brenda, "We're in. Full commitment. Not warmth, recognition, the harder kind." The auditorium emptied slowly, 500 chairs folding like chapters closing behind people already moving toward what came next. Phone calls, wires, term sheets, all the machinery of money that had been paused for an hour and was now running again. Calvin stood at the base of the stage, Brenda beside him, the room finally quiet around them, the way rooms get after something real has happened inside them, and everyone who witnessed it had quietly agreed not to say so out loud. "I should have listened," Calvin said. "You were protecting the company. I was protecting control. There's a difference." That landed between them and stayed there for a moment. "You didn't hesitate," he said. "I did." She paused. "I just trusted the data more than I trusted the hesitation." He nodded slowly, looked at the screen, her mother's fairness framework integrated into the core architecture, running publicly, successfully for the first time. Real output, real stakes, exactly as it was built to perform. He placed his hand on her shoulder, not to guide her, not to manage her, not to claim credit, just to acknowledge what the afternoon had asked of her and what she'd done with it anyway. "You don't sit in row 12 anymore." Brenda looked at the empty chairs, then at the screen still glowing at the front of the room. "I never did." The lights dimmed, row by row. The room went dark. The screen stayed bright. If this story meant something to you, subscribe and turn on notifications.